Promised that we would talk about Thanksgiving, a little history. You know, I'm fascinated by that holiday. And I'm going to just start off by saying Thanksgiving Day, this very day, November the 23rd, I was celebrating my very first Thanksgiving in this country in 1956. So you understand that there is a personal connection to this. But the interesting thing about it, not so much that I think every year back on that really truly day of Thanksgiving for my family and for 100 and some other people that were aboard that first plane carrying refugees. But I will say that when I did research on Thanksgiving, it immediately came up that we have kind of digressed a little. We've made it very secular today. I mean, a lot of people do go to church, but the first Thanksgivings, and there were many, many first Thanksgivings. Thanksgiving started in the Jewish tradition, and I'm willing to bet that all people had in their holidays, their festivities, thankfulness for the harvest, for a battle that was won, for a disease that ravaged a family member and was cured, for getting through tough times. This is a nature of the human spirit. We all have struggles and pain. And when it ceases, the longing of the heart is answered. We give thanks. And so the traditional for us in this country is to think back on the official first Thanksgiving. And I bet you all know the day, right? You all know that it was 1621, right? Yeah? No? Oh my goodness. Well, don't worry. Because actually there were many more Thanksgivings in this country even before 1621. That was news to me. I didn't know that. So one of the things that blew me away was that I was led to believe that that first Thanksgiving, and I go back to my history lessons back there in the grade school, I was led to believe that it was actually all these religious people coming together and praying about being thankful. In other words, I was led to believe that it was pretty much a religious Thanksgiving with praising and everything. Well, that's only partly true, because there were only 60 on the Mayflower who were Puritans. They were separatists, and that's the word used. But there were a lot of other people aboard that ship, 102 souls. They were adventurers, strangers they called them. Now just imagine that. They called them strangers. In other words, they didn't have anything to do with each other. So when they landed, originally was supposed to land in Virginia. Did y'all know that? I didn't know that. But there was a storm. Their voyage lasted 90 days, much longer than they had anticipated. They ended up in Plymouth Rock. So the problem was for them, it was winter. And they were nearly starving. And many died that first year. And you know what? They didn't have very much food. And they didn't have shelter. These folks, now again, I didn't realize this, they were not country people. They didn't know how to fish, they didn't know how to hunt. They were basically city dwellers. So it is because Native Americans came to them, befriended them, taught them how to fish, that the ocean was full of good things to eat. That's the reason they survived, because they learned how to fish. They were terrible hunters, And it was actually the Native Americans that were with them. And there weren't many. There were only a few because these Native Americans had, unfortunately, been in contact with English before Englishmen, and they had smallpox, and a whole nation literally died. But there were a couple that survived, and these two, and I'm sorry I don't know their names. I can't repeat it. I was going to show you but my TV didn't come up like I wanted it to. So here were these people, nearly starving, and if it weren't for the Native Americans coming to them and teaching them how to fish, they would not have survived. So they sailed in 1620. The first Thanksgiving that we think about as Thanksgiving was 1621. And so I'm sure you're not thinking they were having turkeys and a big feast with cranberry, right? You're not all thinking this. Because if you are, that is not actually what happened. They actually had a lot of fish. They had mussels, they had clams, and the oceans around where they were living were full of wonderful things. They probably had lobster, so hey folks, it's pretty nice food, but it wasn't turkey. They did not actually have turkey till much later. As for vegetables, well, I think they had cranberries, they didn't have sugar. Their provisions didn't come till later. They were given some more provisions in a later ship that came to them, but it wasn't at this particular time. So what else did they have to eat? They had, the American Indians hunted 5 deer, and so they ate venison. That was the meal, that was their meat. And I was just kind of interested by it. So this is historical record. I'm not making this up. I had to learn it for myself. So I want to just read to you a letter that has come down to us through history, which is the reason why 1621 is the day that we recognize as the first Thanksgiving, even though there were other Thanksgivings across the colonies, Virginia for one, and also others. So this is a letter written by Edward Winslow. Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men fowling, that so we might after a special manner rejoice together, after we had gathered the fruits of our labors. The 4 in one, they killed as much fowl as with little hope besides served the company almost a week. So they must have caught quite a bit. At which time amongst the recreations we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and amongst us the rest, the greatest king, Massoya. This is one of the ones who spoke English and had actually rescued them from starvation. And so this was the declared holiday. And the thing that I love about this, so there's 2 translations. This one that I'm reading to you is verbatim. And then the modern spelling is really what I had to look at for getting the complete picture. So there were the 5 deer, which they brought to us, the plantation bestowed on our governor, so this is the Mastoit, and upon the captain and others, and although it be not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness of God we are so far from want that we often wish you partakers of our plenty. So there, I don't know if you're getting the sense of gratitude here, but I certainly am. You know, they really had a rough time. They didn't even have shelters very much. They probably just had a very sparse dwelling. The picture on your program, if you read what's on it, and you should look at that. I wish I could have brought it up for you, but technology failed me. So if you look at that picture, that is actually an honest, more honest and truthful rendition, more accurate rendition of what it might have looked like. There have been beautiful paintings about that first Thanksgiving, but they're not accurate. And if you look at this picture, you'll see that they're sparse. So I just wanted to just tell you, because this is kind of interesting. The 53 pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving, 53, that's all there were. 4 married women, and the names are given here. 5 adolescent girls, 13 young children, 22 men. And then it also gives us the family groups. The thing about Thanksgiving is, as I said to the children, we really often ask for things from our Heavenly Father. We ask it of each other. And sometimes we are granted those wishes. There isn't a farmer on this earth anywhere who does not say a prayer. Am I right about that? Anyone who takes care of creatures, animals, prays for their welfare. I pray for my little kitty, just a little kitty, right? We ask for those blessings in our lives. We ask that we are able to continue living in our secure places, that we have jobs. And those are the prayers that come from our hearts. And it is right and it is good to be thankful for them. But I also want to talk about another kind of Thanksgiving that was very much a part of the Puritans' life. See, the Puritans that were among them didn't really have holidays. They were Calvinists. They were truly kind of stern and harsh. The only time that they had a day off was on Sunday, and they spent the whole day in prayer and vigil and fasting. Now, in that first year, that was pretty natural because there wasn't very much food. And so, when we think about, they actually had days of Thanksgiving. They were never on a Sunday. So that was sort of a very special thing, to set aside a day from their work day and to spend it being thankful. And let's face it, they survived. Many did not, but those that did, they had to be very thankful for it. And the fact that they were rescued with food and with skills to hunt and fish. Also the raising of crops. Pumpkin, by the way, was most likely in the first feast. I was very happy to hear that because I love pumpkins. So I am also thinking about their voyage and how hard that was. It was a very cramped ship. They actually took aboard from another ship that didn't do too well. It was Sidlow, I think it was. So they were all crammed together. They had very tight quarters, and it was really, truly a hardship. So that in itself, to be able to leave their country where what they wanted was to express their religious freedom. And so for them it was truly a thankful thing that they had survived. So that's where my own story of Thanksgiving kind of comes together, because you see, my father really did escape for religious reasons. And so when we landed here, it was really an amazing experience. And I can't help but think, November the 22nd we arrived, day before Thanksgiving, and my first experience of Thanksgiving was incredible. We were really blessed. And one of the first things we did on November 23rd, this was in Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, which was the place where we were received and processed in this country. My family, that's my mother, father, my brother Cornell, were the ones that were here in this country. We went to this little church in Camp Kilmer, and that was our first Thanksgiving worship. And then we were invited to a family for Thanksgiving dinner. So that was my first experience at a real American Thanksgiving. So naturally, I have to think about how thankful my family was. But in many ways, it was also bittersweet, a little bit for the Pilgrims. They had lost a lot of people in that first year. There were, I think, a couple died on the voyage itself. There was tragedy always when you're leaving your home, when you're leaving security, and you don't know what's going to happen. And to be almost rescued, that was the important thing for us. That's what we felt. And I have a suspicion that was also true for the Pilgrims. And so how do we deal with it today about how are we thankful? So think about the things that God does for us without us even asking. Deep down in our hearts, we all long for God's kingdom to be in our hearts, to grow in our hearts. And that is God's gift to us. And we may be asking for that, both in our public prayers and in our private prayers. And that God will always grant, because it's His desire to give us the kingdom. We are very blessed to know that God created the human beings as the seminary of the angelic kingdom. So we know we're intended for heaven, right? We know this. So the question is, how do we open our hearts and minds to receive God's kingdom in our lives, in the very things we do with our hands, with our very being, the way we lead our lives. And that is God's work in us. And for that, we are very thankful. So it's a very special day. I'm so glad that I'm here with you. For this, I am very thankful. Amen.